Afternoon TKO. Sergeant Major Thumper here out on the range with a lesson on the 1841 Mississippi. Let's get to it. The Mississippi 1841, it's a rare rifle in the CSA. It's a rare rifle in the game. Only a handful of companies gets it. Um, if you can guess which one, I'll give you a Buffalo nickel, but it's not Mississippi. You guess it, it would be the Louisiana Zouaves. They get the Mississippi. The Mississippi is a short rifle. It's 48 and a half inches long. The like the pattern infield, it's like 55 inches long. So the Mississippi is like 10 inches shorter than the pattern infield. But the Mississippi has a range of 1,100 yards. It's kind of interesting, really, because the pattern infield now it has a max range of 1,000 yards, right? And it has elevated sights. It has three stages of elevated sights. You can bring up the first stage is out to 300 yards, second stage is out to 500 yards, and the third stage out to 750 yards. And that enables you to get more range out of your rifle without covering your target up with your sight. Well, the Mississippi doesn't have that, right? It doesn't have an elevated sight. It just has a really long front post on its barrel. 1,100 yards is the posted range for this weapon. I haven't hit anything outside 700 yards, but then again, I haven't really tried, so I'm pretty sure I could. The Mississippi is a rifled musket. It shoots, what is it, mini balls? Yes, mini balls, which is kind of like a ball with a pointed tip, and then the backside of it's kind of like a cone that expands as it's fired into the grooves of the rifling, and it gives it that spin. When it comes out of the barrel, it's spinning, which kind of keeps it on course, keeps it from veering left or right like a smoothbore would. Makes it way more accurate. All right. While the Mississippi is rated at 1,100 yards, in the game, you're rarely ever going to engage the enemy past 150, 200 yards at the most. A lot of your engagements are going to be, between 50 and 150 yards, averaging about 100 yards, 150. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start at 50 yards, work my way back to 100, then at 150. And I'll let you see how this gun operates in those ranges, which is again is the most common ranges that you're going to be engaging the enemy while playing War of Rights. Before we get into firing exercises, I wanted to go into a little bit of why I mentioned the rifle length. The fact that this is 10 inches shorter, that matters in melee combat. You're going to have to be closer to someone in order to stab them, right? You're going to have to be right up on them to stab them. See, I still can't stab this tree. I got to be right up on it to stab this tree. Anybody with, say, a pattern infield or an 1855 or an 1842, anybody with a longer rifle, they can stab you before you can stab them if you're using the Mississippi. Just keep that in mind during melee combat. All right, so you saw 10 shots at 50 yards. I did 5 shots at position 4 and 5 shots at position 3. That's just to illustrate the fact that you really want to be aiming at body mass at the chest and not the head. If you aim at position 3, aiming at their waist area, you're more likely to hit the chest. And that's because, like all rifles, there's this slight rise when you're inside 150 yards. Anyhow, that's the story with aiming low at close ranges. It's just that your bullet will travel upwards for a little bit and then come back down. Let's move out to 100 yards and try this again. So at 100 yards, I shot 5 shots at position 3, and they were hitting high on the target. So what I did was I lowered my position to position 2, aiming at their knees at 100 yards away, right? And then I started getting my chest shots where I wanted to hit it. What that means is that the Mississippi also, like the 1842, has a very high, a very pronounced parabolic arc that the bullet travels in when you fire it. It's even more pronounced than the 42. So the Mississippi, between 50 and 100, 150 yards, you got to be, if you're at 50 yards, aiming at their waist is fine. But you get out to 100 yards, now you got to aim at their knees. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You got to aim lower the further out you go until you get out to about 150 yards. Let's move out to 150 yards and see how that operates, and we'll go from there. Ah, feels good to get out of those pajamas into some more respectable attire. So that's the Mississippi. You saw at 150 yards, uh, in order to get those kill shots, I mean, I did miss a couple of times. Shooting at these targets, you got to be real careful of aiming dead center, as center as you can get it in that middle target, and you still might miss left or right. You get out to 150 yards, and it starts to get more erratic, as far as your grouping goes. But it seems like the elevation, it's still, between 2 and 3. You're aiming at their knees or their waist to get those kill shots, even at 150 yards with the Mississippi. That's why it has a range of 1,100 yards because it's got such a pronounced uh, arc for the bullet to travel. Well, anyway, that's the Mississippi. I hope you learned something, and keep in mind when you're at close ranges or even maximum ranges for what the battles allow, 150, 200 yards. You're not aiming at their heads. You're aiming at their waist or their knees. Depending on how close you are. The closer you get, you can aim at their waist. But if you're at 150 yards, think about aiming at their knees. It's counterintuitive, but that's just how the Mississippi works. I hope you learned something, and let's go stack some bodies.